Dang it. Oh, no. Come on in. Because now it's time to learn, to cook, to taste. Hello and welcome to Taste, the podcast where every episode dives deep into a different food. The goal of the podcast is to help you become a more intuitive cook by exploring things in depth. The hope is that, you learn all of the inflection points, challenges, considerations, ingredients, variations of a specific dish, and they can kind of become a part of a Rolodex you have of tools, philosophies, principles. But right now, every other week, I'm also sharing short food and travel stories that I wrote, and this week's story is about sandwiches. It's called The Normal Sandwich My Mom Used to Make. The normal sandwich my mom used to make. I'm in Camden, Maine, about 2 hours coastally north of Portland, for a wedding. The last time I was here was in winter of 2021, for a few cold, icy weeks. And the summer here is just lovely. It's so green, in a way California can't totally compete with. The plants seem to have stored up their wintertime suffering and transformed it into a rebellious explosion of lushness. The town, too, has come alive this visit. The line for the main coffee shop spills onto the sidewalk. A jazz sextet plays in the park. The nearby ocean, its harbor dotted with, according to Camden's government website, historic schooners and windjammers, pleasure vessels, and working boats. Keeps the temperature cool. It's nice here, and it's nice to be back to see the flip side of what I experienced before, to be drawn outward towards the rivers and lakes and down small meandering roads rather than shut inwards against the cold. I had two goals for the trip. First, I wanted to try Maine's famous wild blueberries, as well as their wild blueberry cake. Second, I wanted to go to Moody's Diner. I'd first heard of Moody's in a story by John Thorne, one of my favorite food writers, where he described getting a plate of fried chicken livers at the homey restaurant. Then, cosmically, on this very trip, I saw Moody's mentioned again in the book I'm currently reading, Far Flung and Well Fed, by R.W. Apple Jr., who also seemed to have been motivated by Thorne's glowing review. My visit to Moody's would have to wait. We arrived in Camden just after midnight, so it was long closed. I did, however, do some solid eating out, the highlight of which was a scoop of ice cream from John's Ice Cream Factory in Liberty, Maine, about 30 minutes north towards Canada from Camden. There, I had a scoop of their peanut butter crunch, a chewy peanut butter base with huge, fudgy chunks of peanut butter ribbon and impossibly crunchy smears of what seemed to be some sort of chocolate cookie crumble. Unbelievable. Easily in the top 10 scoops of ice cream I've ever had. Maybe top 5. I'd do anything for John, the John that started the Ice Cream Factory. He wasn't around, though, so the best I could do was buy a t-shirt. As for the blueberry cake, my intention was to hunt down a well-loved version, or 3, in order to see what they were all about. As fate would have it, however, number 1, someone in my party, a grandmother, expressed interest in reliving a memory she had of eating blueberry buckle in her youth. 2, my first day in town, I quickly ran into a very large box of local wild blueberries that I couldn't resist buying. 3, I was destined, rather than trying someone else's blueberry cake, to make my own blueberry buckle. The buckle turned out okay. It was beautifully pocked with the small local blueberries, but I kind of flubbed the crumble. And once I'd made it, I kind of couldn't stop. It launched me unexpectedly into a week pleasantly full of cooking. I made a lot of food. Over-the-top cinnamon sugar toast, my famous backpack tomato and feta pasta salad. But the biggest highlight was making some pleasure vessels of my own. Sandwiches. Simple sandwiches. Normal sandwiches. A few years ago, when I was working as a cook in a restaurant, I had a sandwich crisis. I'd been making sandwiches at home that were too much, too fancy, too complicated, too big, too hard to eat, too loud. I didn't really understand how to make a normal sandwich. The kind of sandwich my mom made for me when she'd send me down to the community pool on a summer day. Something simple and seemingly thrown together, but so satisfying. Honest to whatever God you want to believe in, I was so lost that I typed how to make a normal sandwich into my internet browser. I also asked my chef and fellow cooks at work how they made theirs. My friend Julio very patiently walked me through his technique and his ingredients of choice: white bread, turkey, cheese, mayo, mustard, pickled jalapenos. The next day, I went to the store, and for one of the very first times in my adult life, I bought myself sliced turkey. For the next couple of weeks, I made myself simple sandwiches exactly the way Julio told me to. They were awesome. I loved them. Still, though, it felt like I was just going through the motions. It was a lovely, normal sandwich, but it wasn't mine. What was my ideal, completely normal, basic, unfussy sandwich? I wasn't sure. After a while, I stopped, and I didn't really think about normal sandwiches for a few years. That is, until this week, when I offered to make sandwiches for myself and another person. I bought all the ingredients earlier that day: the ripest grocery store tomato I could find, a head of iceberg, a red onion, bread and butter pickles, white bread, provolone, Colby Jack, turkey, honey ham, and Genoa salami. I cut the head of iceberg in quarters, leaving attractive large pieces of lettuce, the tomato thin enough to be non-intrusive but thick enough to give it some summer moisture, and the onion as thin as I could get it with this rental house's knives. I put the sandwich together slowly, very lovingly, and intentionally layering the sauces, vegetables, pickles, meat, cheese, like a parent whose only responsibility is making sandwiches. And honestly, the person I made it for said it was one of the best sandwiches they'd had in recent memory. That felt nice. I made many more cold cut sandwiches in the days that followed, customized to what people wanted. No salami on mine, just mayo, please. I made a couple tuna sandwiches, starting out a bit maximalist, both in the tuna salad, cornichons, pickled jalapeno liquid, and in the toppings, sliding some wonderfully acidic and crunchy Fox family salt and vinegar chips into the bread, before landing on a more, in my mind, Philly-styled, quote-unquote, tuna, of canned tuna simply whipped with mayo, salt, pepper, and a touch of mustard on white bread, with some requested quick pickled shallots for crunch and some acid. Simpler. Closer. One of my first food memories is of a rotisserie chicken and butter sandwich. It was second grade, and I guess some generous parents brought in a couple chickens, sticks of butter, and a loaf of white bread, because I remember seeing the chickens, and I remember thick chunks of cold butter against the back of my teeth, warm flesh and skin, soft bread on the roof of my mouth. What a strange sandwich to not only make, but to bring into a group full of other people. Is that something that person made all the time? Have you had that before? Well, if you haven't, you should. It's amazing. And this week, with that memory in mind, I became that strange person, instructing a group of 25 people, half strangers, on how to eat cold butter and hot rotisserie chicken sandwiches. It's an easy assembly. Tear chunks of hot rotisserie chicken off the bone, slice thick rectangles of cold, salted butter, thicker and more of them than you could possibly imagine. Layer both between soft white bread and enjoy. It might sound overly rich or incomplete, but trust me, it's worth a try. If not to fill the void, at least to share a memory. We bought way too many rotisserie chickens, and the excess led to my sandwich highlight of the week. Rotisserie chicken pulled, dark meat and light, skin and all, palmed into a puck, topped with a slice of Colby Jack, and microwaved with my face pressed up against the little window, watching the cheese melt, perhaps opening the door to give it a poke. I don't use the microwave that often, so I was cautious, fearful of reenacting haunting memories of failed childhood nacho attempts. The door swinging open, my little heart sinking as I spotted the irreversible damage of hardened, cratered cheese, shrink-wrapped around chips. When it came out of the microwave, I placed a slice of soft, simple white bread on top of the now steaming, gooey lump. I wiped another slice with a generous coating of Duke's mayonnaise and carefully smeared into that a dollop of local Dijon-style mustard. To assemble the sandwich, I groped the bread hiding the cheesy chicken and squished the top and filling together enough that when I flipped the whole mess over, they all stayed connected as one cohesive half sandwich. The lid went on, and the sandwich was cut diagonally into triangles. It was soft, melty, warm, and delicious. Very comforting. I couldn't possibly speak generally and authoritatively about sandwiches, but I will say it seems to me that restraint and simplicity go a long way. Not every sandwich needs lettuce, tomato, and onion. Where did that come from anyhow? And in fact, I think many of the Hall of Fame sandwiches don't use them, but that's not really what I want to say. I guess some part of me has felt like I'll never be able to make sandwiches like my mom made for me, that I think too much about food to make the same sandwich. Heck, even the simple cold cut sandwiches I made on this trip, I made meticulously. My mom's sandwiches weren't meticulous. But come to think of it, I guess the Colby Jack and rotisserie chicken one I made wasn't either. Maybe that's why it was so good. Shut the brain off and let the goodness and ease take over. Can't remember the last time I melted cheese in the microwave. Works pretty good. I had my last sandwich of the trip just a couple hours ago. On the way back from Camden, heading towards Portland, where I'm to catch a flight to Edinburgh, which, if you have any recommendations on where to get Cullen skink or rutted flath, please do let me know. Me and the group I'm traveling with stopped into Moody's Diner for lunch. John Thorne, I think, visited the diner in the 1990s, but nowadays it feels to me like a bit of a tourist attraction. It has a whole separate gift shop building sitting across a large, very full parking lot. Or at least a bit like the restaurant isn't designed to handle their current popularity with pass-throughs headed to and from Portland and mid-coast Maine. On this particular Monday, it took us about an hour and a half from door to door, which, for me, for a diner basically in the middle of nowhere, is too long. Sorry, I'm complaining. The point is I got myself a ham salad sandwich on white bread. For those uninitiated, ham salad is like tuna salad or chicken salad, but with chopped ham. It's an old school thing that you don't see out too often. My friend Ben's dad introduced me to it and makes it every Christmas. It rocks. Back to Moody's. Here, feels wrong to use this word here, but salad was plentiful, shiny, spreadable, and laden with mayonnaise. A lot of mayonnaise, geez. I looked at the table of 10, a mixture of parents, kids, and one vacant-eyed grandparent seated over my right shoulder. A young girl ordered from a server. "Are your fraps gluten-free?" the customer asked. "Yeah, I think it's just... yeah. Okay, I'll take a strawberry frap." I took a bite of my sandwich. Oof. Salty. Really creamy. I looked closer. Dang. Really creamy. Is it just ham, mayo, and salt? I looked back at the table on my right. Two parents wore crisp Moody's Diner t-shirts, a bold move to buy before eating. I myself perused the shirts before our buzzer, a warning sign if I've ever seen one, went off, alerting us that our table was ready. It had some pretty nice colors. I was tempted. Across from the newly t-shirted couple, I watched the teenage boy slug back one of those little half-and-half creamer pods. I winced and wondered why he did that. Was he thirsty? Hungry? Growing and protein-starved? Showing off? Then I thought about what it would taste like to pour one of those into a cold glass of root beer. Probably gross. I looked back at my ham salad sandwich. Kind of gross too, I guess. Simple, but maybe not made with so much love. Kind of need the love. And honestly, you'll probably hate to hear this, but I think I've had enough sandwiches for a little while. I think I could use a real salad or a big plate of vegetables. Maybe Edinburgh will have a few of those. They're supposed to be known for their salads, right? You've been listening to Taste. I'm your host, Cody Reiss, and if you like that story, you can find more of my writing about food and travel on my SubStack, which is also called To Taste. Our art is by Ben Baloney, and our music is by Justin Kohlberg of Moonrun. We'll be back next week with another interview. Take care.